Awesome. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. We are calling this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. Let's start. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Could we strike SFS, please?
I'm gonna give
Striking
open
SFS.
report.
Sorry, Bacher, what did you say?
Oh, I was saying I'm gonna give a verbal report.
Okay. I'm changing the election code amendment transition director to an action item. So can folks vote on that, please?
Can I get a motion?
I move to make the election board transition director an action item.
I second.
Jonathan motions, Zuleika seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. By unanimous vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the motion passes, and you're making that an action item. Emily, can you actually also please strike my Bruin Emergency Fund referendum presentation? We're moving it to next week.
Sounds good. ARC. I'm moving ARC to the end so that Promise can make it. Striking bag, striking ASRF, striking travel mini grant, and striking capital contingency. Verbal report for Christina.
Could I also give a verbal report, and can we also strike TGIF?
Striking TGIF, verbal report for Sachi.
Any more amendments to the agenda? Okay, if not, can I get a motion?
A motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I second.
Emily motions, Sachi seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, by a vote of 10 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and the agenda is approved. Thank you. Can we move on to approval of the minutes? I believe that is from, yeah, I'm not even gonna try.
I move to approve the minutes from March 9th.
Okay.
I second.
Sachi motions, Jonathan seconds. All in favor? Okay, all abstaining?
I raised my hand for yes, but I'll actually be abstaining.
Okay,
Same here.
okay, wait. I believe that was 9. So Elijah, is that a new hand? Okay, and Aiden?
Yes, to abstain.
Yes to abstain? Okay.
Yes to abstain as well.
Yes to abstain. Okay, so 9 minus 2 is 7 plus 4. Okay, by a 7 to 0 to 4 vote, the motion passes and the minutes were approved. Moving on to public comment. So public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to be able to address council on matters that are concerning to them. Please remember that you have 2 minutes once you're called upon. Remember to use gender inclusive language and just respectful language as a whole. Remember, freedom of speech does not mean freedom from accountability. And if you would like to give public comment, please raise your hand. Then you will be promoted. At that point, please raise your hand again because then your hand will be lowered. If you'd like to give public comment, please raise your hand at this time. Okay, promoting Brandon and David. Brandon, feel free to begin.
Hi, I'm Brandon. I'm an undergraduate student at UCLA. I was hoping for some comment involving why the USAC Council chose not to put some legislation involving, sorry. I was hoping for some comment from the USAC Council on why they did not vote to put a referenda on having an independent election and judicial board on the ballot for this upcoming election.
Thank you, Brandon. David?
Yeah, I also wanted to just sort of express my support for some constitutional amendments. I think it would be nice to have a more independent judicial and elections board, as well as to lower the signature count for putting ballot measures on the ballot for students to vote on. Oh yeah, I just wanted to express my support for those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I believe we may have already discussed those amendments and constitutional amendments. Our reasonings for why we oppose were expressly stated within those contexts. But I think any council member that voted no would be open to having a larger conversation outside of this meeting, since it's not already on our agenda. But thank you so much again for your public comments. Would anyone else like to give public comment? Going once, twice. Okay, we will be concluding public comment at 7:11 p.m. Thank you everybody for participating. Moving on to our funding bodies. David, you can take it away with contingency programming.
Hi, everyone. So this, well, actually over finals and over spring break, the total amount requested for the applications are $4,490.93. And then the total amount recommended is $4,250.94. And these are to 12 non-USAC entities.
Anyone motioning?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
David, I saw on one of the things, one of the allocations was for hospitality. I just wanted to ensure that it was going to be through Zoom.
All of them should be through Zoom. I've reached out. Which one was it? Oh, do you mean the hospitality as in like the food, the line item for hospitality?
I have to look through it one more time. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, strike that. It was for food. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So can I get a motion from anyone?
I move to approve $4,250.94 to 12 non-USAC entities.
Second.
Jonathan motions, Noe seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, by unanimous vote, the motion is approved, or yeah, the motion passes and the contingency programming funds are approved for this week. Awesome. And we are actually moving on to our special presentations. So yeah, we can actually move on to financial aid and scholarships presentation. I don't know if Ina's here. Oh yeah, I see her. I'm gonna promote Ina. Okay, Noe? And then you can feel free to take over.
Okay, awesome. Is she here yet? Okay, I see her. Well, I brought her to council to pretty much discuss any HERF updates that we've been communicating with. We've been meeting with financial aid for the past few weeks now, and we're hoping to continue it through the rest of the quarter. But so I'll let Anna go.
Hi, and actually, can you check if my boss Marvin Smith has joined us yet? I was hoping to introduce him to you guys, and he would actually he can provide some perf information. There he is. So everyone, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ina Sotomayor. I am the Director in Financial Aid and Scholarships. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes today to introduce you to my relatively new boss, not new. He's been with UCLA since the summer, Mr. Marvin Smith, who is the Executive Director in charge of Financial Aid and Scholarships. So I will turn it over to Marvin.
Hey, thanks, Ina, and it's a pleasure to see some familiar faces, Zuleika and Aiden, and some new faces. As Ina said, my name is Marvin Smith. I'm Executive Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships at UCLA. I've actually, this is my dream job, coming to UCLA, kind of like probably your dream school. Coming to UCLA. I've been in financial aid for 30 years. I fell into the profession as a graduate student at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. I was born and raised in Lafayette, and fell into a profession I love. I love enabling low-income students to pay for college, and that started a career. I also spent 4 years at Ivy Tech Community College in Lafayette, and then the last 8 years at IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, before coming to another large urban public, UCLA. So I'm excited to join a great team that Ina has led and developed over her years at UCLA, and thrilled to be able to meet such a great advocacy group for students, and look forward to your questions and fielding your questions and concerns and ideas on how we can promote getting, I tell people our role is to try to get the right money to the right students at the right time in the right way. And I think UCLA does a great job of it, and I look forward to partnering with all of you to help us really be the eyes and ears of students and any concerns you have about the way we're trying to provide access and equity to our students and the students we serve. So that's kind of my background.
Thank you so much, Marvin. I'm Noah Garcia, the Financial Supports Commissioner. I think if we could start off with just like an overview of the current HERF 2 allocations, when UCLA received, I know they received it a few days ago, but really any updates that you can provide us from what you know.
Yeah, I think that there's been some decisions made on having Yolanda Copeland Morgan, our Chief Enrollment Officer at UCLA, chair a a committee that will help make decisions about HERF 2 allocations to students. So the HERF 2 bill that was approved by Congress actually provides money for institutional support and for need-based grants. And one of the differences between HERF 1 and HERF 2 is that they've put into the language exceptional need. So I think that's going to drive us to do things a little bit differently. I think in the last round of HERF awarding that went on last spring, there was some grants awarded to every student, and I think that we're going to be more limited in that regard in HERF 2. I do have a slide deck that I could show that might help us guide some of the discussion, if that's kind of gives you it might help me talk about this. And if that's all right, can I share my screen?
Yes, I'm not sure if you have sharing access already.
You
It
should.
looks like I do. All right.
Okay, perfect.
So, and then let me give you a preview also that Ina says you're probably not aware of, but we're calling this HERF 3. The American Rescue Plan has been approved, and that will actually provide even more need-based student aid grants to students. So let me show this screen. So as you know, the CARES Act created what we called HERF 1, higher education relief funds for students at UCLA, and we distributed $17.9 million between the spring 2020 quarter and just finished up actually some graduate awards in winter 2021 quarter. Just as a reminder, and maybe you guys haven't consulted our website that shares all this information, we distributed about $3.5 million in universal grants, $200 per student. We awarded $10.14 million in need-based grants for undergraduates with high need. We awarded more than $500,000 in impact grants based on appeals. And then graduate and professional students received over $3.67 million. So for this CRSSA Act, we've deemed that HERF 2, and that's another $17.9 million that we're going to be able to distribute. And no decisions have been made on a distribution plan. As I said, Yolanda Copeland Morgan is forming a campus-wide committee. I believe she's interested in a USAC representative and also a graduate student association representative to really help us kind of fine-tune the decisions that are going to be made on how we distribute this money. And again, I think that this is going to be based on need and FAFSA filing. And then you can see on the chart, HERF 3, which we haven't received the funds yet, is part of the American Rescue Plan. And we anticipate $46.5 million being available to UCLA students. So that is it dwarfs the two HERF 1 and HERF 2 amounts combined. And we're hopeful that we can make UCLA even more affordable in the academic year beginning in fall 21. These grants will work very similar to the HERF 1 CARES Act grants in that they won't need to fit into financial aid packages. They'll be on top of financial aid packages, but we'll still, I think that HERF 2 and HERF 3 still have an exceptional need component. I think they're going to, the committee will I think ultimately make these distribution decisions, but from what Ina and I understand about the guidance from the Department of Ed is that we're going to expect a FAFSA to be filed for eligibility for these funds. And we also think that international students, DACA students, undocumented students will not necessarily be eligible until we receive firm guidance from the Department of Ed, and we don't think we're going to receive that. So that's kind of a summary of the HERF funds and the status as of today. And if we have time, I would be curious about gathering some feedback from this group. We're just starting to think about the high need students that have been impacted by the pandemic. Here's a slide where we just brainstormed on ideas, and we're thinking about definitely appeals, definitely students that have been impacted by the pandemic, maybe not been able to work, maybe their parents have lost a job. We always try to prioritize Pell Grant recipients who are the definition of our low-income students. We might have enough money, especially with HERF 3 funds, to fund some more middle-income students, depending on level of need and expected family contribution. We think graduate and professional students will need to benefit from this program or these 2 funds. We wonder about technology grants to make sure that students have the capability to continue to learn online, though I look forward to us at least having a hybrid of on and off campus instruction in the fall. Housing grants, I think that this group probably knows that we expect a limit of housing. I don't think there are going to be any triples. This is housing's working closely, I think, with the county on their rules. But if we don't have triples, the costs might be higher, and we'll try to help students that might face higher costs to live in housing. And then we always try to think about vulnerable populations, parenting students, former foster youth, any students that have been impacted by incarceration, and other groups that we try to identify that are high need. So, this last one is just this last bullet is I think that if this goes as we think it will, we don't think DACA and undocumented students and international students are going to be eligible for this HERF money, but could the institution identify funds for emergency kind of situations for those populations? So that's some of our thinking, and I'll stop sharing and try to maybe get some feedback from the folks.
Yeah, Noe, do you want to facilitate the question part still?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we can just go by raising hands. And if you want to have any comments or questions, just raise your hand. So Bacher.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. I know this conversation is a lot about the HERF money. However, my concern is for specifically international students, similar to previous stimulus funds. I don't think, as you said, that they will be eligible. And so what are possible funds that the university would provide for international students, and like obviously other ineligible like groups? And to add on that, if I remember correctly, last year there was only one ECRT grant given to an international student. It was about 20,000, if I'm not mistaken. But like, I mean, I'm sure that the number is correct, but I mean, like, it's concerning that there is only one allocation when I'm sure that there is a good number of international students facing difficulties. Um, so like I'm just like unsure why there is this like difference between like obvious need and like the allocation. Is it because like low numbers of applicants, or is it because of the criteria set forth, or like what's the reason?
Well, we're driven by federal student aid policy, and I certainly understand the concerns, and I think we maybe even have communicated, Bakr. I think that international students, DACA students, undocumented students are going to need to seek different avenues, and I encourage you to continue to voice your concerns about students that are in crisis, and to encourage appeal processes. So I think that that's that's probably my best advice for those student groups. And my sense is that that ECRT and other kind of safety nets at UCLA are going to do everything they can to help students in crisis.
And Bakor, to build on Marvin's answer, to provide funding for undocumented and international students, the university actually provided $3 million to match HERF-1 funding when we realized that international and undocumented students were not eligible for federal support. So we are hoping that similar advocacy and institutional contribution could be made available for ongoing student needs.
Thank you for that. Aiden?
Hi, Marvin and Nina. Good to see you again. And I think I kind of share with the feedback. I think the kind of slide that you showed in terms of prioritizing the new aid money, fairly well tracks with what we of USAC have been trying to prioritize with, focusing on students with the greatest need, but also with new money expanding and focusing on students who, might not be covered by the or falling through the cracks of the current supports that still face additional need. And really want to highlight, I know, for undocumented students who are ineligible for CalFresh, for international students as well, the fact that these populations face some of the highest basic needs rates. We want to make sure that they have other forms of institutional support. So I echo Bakur's point. One of the clarifying questions I had was just around kind of the HERF-2 funding, which comes from the December bill, right? And then the HERF-3 from the American Rescue Plan. So for that American Rescue Plan money, will that go towards students current to the spring quarter or summer term, or is it all going to be kind of dispersed for students who will be around in fall of next academic year?
No, great question, Aiden. And I think it's to be determined. I don't want to try to overstep my bounds. That Yolanda's going to lead a committee that will look at this, though I believe that we're going to try to do all we can to address urgent needs for spring quarter and summer quarter. And I think we'll still have funds available for the fall semester. So that's how I predict this might play out. This will be up to the committee. And I think that, I think USAC's role is to try to advocate for any urgent needs and ideas you have for spring quarter and summer. And then I think the decisions will be made to try to distribute as much as we can to help students as they return to campus in the fall and face, I think that we're in uncharted territory here on how many students are going to be able to afford to come back. We're going to try to limit their potential loan debt, and we're not sure. We saw a 20% increase in income loss appeals. That might grow, for fall. So I think that we haven't even started awarding aid and reviewing FAFSAs for continuing students. We'll get that done in late June, July. And I think we'll know more about where students are and how many appeals we're going to be looking at.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ina, is there anything you'd like to add?
The only thing I would like to second Marvin in saying that we will advocate and would definitely want to have some of the funds available in the spring. We already have appeals from students that have additional needs that we weren't able to meet before HERF-1 money ran out. So at least for special circumstances and appeals, financial aid and scholarships, we can definitely use funds and start deploying those to needy students as soon as possible. So that is, I am sure that that's going to be discussed with the committee, and we are going to advocate for immediate needs of our students. And knowing with HERF-3 there will be additional funding available through the end of the year. Regulatorily, we do have a year to spend HERF-2 money. So we actually received our allocation in mid-March. So we have until mid-March of next year to spend the funds. I do not anticipate it will take us that long at all, but that's the time frame.
Thank you. Naomi?
Yeah, I had a comment and then 2 questions. I also just wanted to voice my support for thinking about housing within the prioritization too. We all know, or we may know that, we're not sure if we're going to return to doubles, triples, or singles, and that will probably drive the price up for students who are in need. So wanted to voice my support there. And then I had 2 questions. One is logistical, but when will that committee that Vice Provost Yolanda Copeland Morgan, when is that committee going to be convening?
I think she would like to get it done by the middle or late April. So I think that's on her priority list is to try to get this committee formed.
Okay, awesome. And then I just had another question. I know that there have been some students who have seen loan adjustment, or they've been receiving grants for previous loans. Is that also coming from HERF, or is that coming from someplace else?
That's coming from someplace else. That we had university grant aid that usually went to low-income students to pay for their housing. And if you remember back in last fall, we reduced cost of attendance for students that were going to live at home. And so we repurposed that money for low-income students who had borrowed and tried to reduce their student loan debt. And so we were thankful to be able to do that, but it really had nothing to do with HERF funds. But good question, Naomi.
Yeah, okay. I know some students were asking, and I was wondering if that was going to be something that would continue into next year, but it seems to make sense that it might not.
Well, hopefully it makes sense. And we wanted, the cost will rise this fall. And that's why I'm saying I'm hopeful that HERF-2 and HERF-3 will help alleviate some of those costs, because it costs money to live in the residence halls and have a great meal plan and live on the hill. So
Thank you. Sachi?
Yeah, I just had a quick question going off of what Naomi was saying about housing. I also think that that's a really important factor to consider, but I also wanted to throw in the potential mix of prioritization, students with disabilities. Campus housing is, oftentimes more accessible than off-campus housing. So, there are less options for students with disabilities, and campus housing is usually kind of the first option. So if the cost of that is increasing, along with other financial barriers that students with disabilities might face, I would definitely advocate that they're within, consideration for prioritization.
No, great observation and feedback, and I'll add that to the list. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from any council members?
Can I make one closing comment? I think that you heard me say that I think the FAFSA is going to be required for consideration for HERF 2 and HERF 3. I think USAC could play a role in encouraging FAFSA filing for maybe middle income students that have never filed the FAFSA before. It is not as painful as you might think. It definitely creates eligibility for loans, that at a minimum. And I know that students don't want to have to borrow if they don't have to. But let's say that a family, their 2020 income has been dramatically reduced. They should file the FAFSA, and then they're going to go through an appeal process, a prior year income appeal process. They might end up qualifying for some HERF funds. And I think USAC could help us spread that message to our middle income students that have maybe never even thought about filing a FAFSA. So that would be appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that our commission could work on and publicize it to the council. So we could publicize it widely as well. And lastly, for me, I'd also just like to voice my support for the priorities that you're considering, as well as the groups that Sashi mentioned. And I really do think that institutional aid for DACA, undocumented students, international students is a must. I think it's necessary for our students. I don't think we could award grants to a group of students, but then exclude those who are DACA, undocumented or international students. And then Promise, I see your hand.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I don't know if this was asked yet, but I wanted to kind of inquire again about the loan forgiveness or like just the money that's being dispersed to students to pay their loans. Can you kind of talk, like, kind of explain that a little bit? And like, just is it in the form of a refund that gets returned to the student and then it's on the student to like pay their loan provider, or like how is that working?
I think it was a combination. Students that had borrowed this year, we returned their loan proceeds. Students that didn't have to borrow this year because cost of attendance was lower and they were maybe living with their parents, we looked at their past debts, at least for undergraduates from in-state, and communicated with them that a refund, we encourage them to use that to pay down their student loan. We couldn't require that. But yeah, that was kind of the goal of that project. And it was really focused on Pell Grant eligible students that had borrowed. So that, if you were eligible, we let you know. If you weren't eligible, we didn't let you know because of equity concerns and so forth. So, but we let a lot of students know and reduced a lot of student loan debt for students enrolled this year.
And last question, is it still ongoing or is that like program done?
I think that project is done. So I think that we met our goal, and I don't think we're going to be reviewing any more kind of packaging parameters like that. But that said, any student that's facing a financial crisis or a loss of income should be encouraged to appeal. We've tried to streamline that appeal form also. There used to be like 3 appeal forms for winter quarter, going back for fall quarter, winter quarter, spring quarter. That's all on one form where students can tell us, how they've been negatively financially impacted by the pandemic.
Great, thank you. And I know for the loans as well, Ina showed me the emails that students received, And so everyone who received an email received one of two emails, I believe, which gave pretty specific instructions on how to kind of handle their grant. And so if a student still never saw the email, you can always just tell them to check their email again and see if they received it. And I think that is all the questions that council has. Thank you so much both for coming and speaking with us. I do look forward to having USAC representation in that committee discussing what to do with the allocations, as well as HERF 3 allocations once those get to UCLA. So thank you for coming out, and that is all I have.
That's great. And I just wanted to do a shout out again to USAC for your support of low income students. Your double the Pell advocacy is so impressive. I was in a panel last week with Aiden and Zuleika. The fact that, you know, USAC is supporting a third of the students at UCLA receive Pell Grants, 2/3 don't. Many in this group probably don't receive Pell Grants. Your advocacy for low-income students, international students, DACA students is really impressive, and I'm just so impressed by USAC and UCLA students, and go Bruins.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Yay, thank you so much for coming.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, moving on to our next item, we have our officer reports, and I will go first. I kind of have a lot to say, but I'll just try to keep it short for the most part, since we haven't met for the last 3 weeks, but just wanted to update you all about the ongoing conversations that are being had regarding COVID-19. Zuleika and I have sat on the housing prioritization team along with other students who have been, and we've been discussing our recommendations for how to prioritize fall housing. And that information, I believe, is currently being distributed to students. We are also discussing a process, for thinking through like accommodations for faculty and students who aren't going to want to return to in-person work or learning. And we're also talking about spring reopening and what that looks like in non-academic spaces on campus. So thinking through all of that, because as you all know, we've moved from the orange or the purple tier to the red tier, and we're projected to move into the orange tier. Of course, I think Jonathan might talk about this later, but Jonathan and Amanda have been really advocating on the commencement working group to really think through what commencement will look like for our graduating seniors. Of course, it will look very different. As you all know too, USC announced that they will be having a commencement at the Coliseum, and we are hoping to get something similar, but of course that advocacy is still ongoing. And then I guess just the biggest point, as you all know, Aiden and I and so many others have been working tirelessly regarding the Campus Safety Symposium and just policing as a whole as an issue. And I had the opportunity along with UCSA and UCGPC to represent the Council of Presidents and give our student priorities for what we believe policing should look like. And I really encourage you all to check out that presentation. That whole symposium was filled with students that had been voicing their concerns and their ideas for policing, which include abolition. And this has been an ongoing conversation. Yeah, so we will be figuring out how we will continue to influence the process as President Drake and other folks continue to think through what recommendations and guidelines are going to look like for schools. I'm looking, sorry. I'm also in preparation or preparing for our Future Student Leaders of Color Conference and what that's going to look like in 2 weeks. Our referendum team is working really hard to finish up their presentation and present it to the council next week. As you all just heard, there's COVID, I think, exacerbates existing financial inequities that already existed. And we are hoping to bring another proposal forward to the council that seeks to discuss that and not necessarily remedy it, but help in that fight. So yeah, I won't bore you all with everything else, but The main things are just if you have any questions or concerns about what's going on within housing, please feel free to reach out to myself and Zuleika. I think I'm just gonna like put Emily on the spot here real quick, but Emily also is not going to be able to serve on our education working group. So if anybody's interested in serving on that group, please let us know. The meetings are on Mondays at 4 p.m. And it would be really helpful if someone could fill that position. So that way we make sure we have student representation on all these committees. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait, one last thing. Sorry. I'm actually also really excited because today Patty and I met with the marketing team from ASU CLA, and we're also going to be releasing a kind of video for breaking down student fees in a similar way that we've done with graphics. But we're really going to be addressing or trying to create a marketing campaign in partnership with ASU CLA to explain where our student fees go in a way that's accessible and tangible for our students. So yeah, thanks. Emily, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Nothing much from me. My drive down rent and finance committees was to review all the applications for our rent relief awards. And they sent out all decisions in the beginning of spring break. So now they're working on filling out the requisitions, and we're hoping to turn them in by the end of this week and next week to get these checks rolling out to students. And then my other thing is that thank you, Zuleika, for inviting me to be part of planning an AAPI healing space, addressing anti-Asian like violence and incidents that's happened in the last few weeks, including the shootings of 6 Asian women in Atlanta during finals week, which I know a lot of students were not able to fully process because of the fact that we were all writing our finals. So that's going to be tomorrow at 6:30 to 8 p.m. and it's open invite. So anyone is welcome. You can be an ally as well and show up for folks. So yeah, hope to see you there. I think that's all for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Go ahead, Aiden.
Thank you. And oh my gosh, yeah, you'd think that spring break would give us a break, but not really. Wanted to first start on, as Naomi mentioned, the Campus Safety Symposium, which was held last week, did a lot of work with Naomi, with our UCSA colleagues and colleagues at the UC Graduate and Professional Council, preparing our student priorities relating to policing, reallocation of resources, budgetary issues, accountability, transparency, all on the pathway moving towards abolition. That was the kind of thrust of our arguments and the priorities we raised, and really want to shout out Naomi for her leadership on this and for her presentation. Everything that she said resonated throughout the rest of the entire session. And I think the work of the folks at the No UC PD Coalition here at UCLA were very well represented at the symposium and guided a lot of the conversations throughout the rest of the day that everybody else was referring to. So that was a major thing from last week we were working on. Our office also participated in UCSA's Student Lobby Conference, which was held 2 weekends ago. We brought nearly 30 students, UCLA students, virtually to this conference where they were able to learn about advocacy, coalition building, lobbying, and then actually share their perspectives and priorities with state assembly members and senators on last Monday. And we were able to bring the most out of any other campuses. So Bruins were very well represented, and we were able to speak on a number of key priorities relating to access, recruitment, and retention, menstrual equity, transparency and accountability for Greek organizations, affordable student housing, Cal Grant financial aid reform, and then also police accountability at the state level. Those were some of the issues that we brought up. And really want to give a big thank you to our co-chairs of the delegation, Sarah Wang and Gabe Feiner, who were able to put together such an important and impactful delegation. And then final thing that I'll leave you with, looking forward, what our office is preparing for is, even though USAC is preparing for USAC elections, there actually will be an election that week after, a state election for the now vacant assembly seat that represents UCLA. Sydney Kamlager, a formerly assembly member, is now moving on to the Senate. Her seat is open, and we're gearing up for a Bruins vote effort for the special election on May 18th. Which will kick off, actually, you thought elections were over in November. We actually have 3 to 4 elections in the next few months. The first one being the special election in May, the second one in June for our neighborhood council. This is really an exciting election because any student, regardless of status, can vote, whether or not you're a citizen, because it's a local election. So we want to make sure that Bruin voices across the spectrum are represented in that election. There may be another runoff election on the assembly district one later in the summer. And then in the summer or early fall, it's looking like we're going to have the gubernatorial recall election. So in all of those chances for Bruins to have their voices heard, we want to make sure that we have robust Bruins vote efforts, which is what we're preparing for. But those conclude my reports, and happy to answer questions after.
Thank you, Aiden. Okay. Moving on to, I believe AAC's next.
Yeah, I think I only have a couple of updates. We will be releasing books for Bruins later this week, and our student advocate board, we finished reviewing applications. We'll be interviewing this week, and we will hopefully have like our appointments for the student advocate board next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Breeze. CEC? Or sorry, CSC.
Hey, hi, hello. Hope everyone is well. What's new in CSC land? Plenty. So first thing I want to talk about is the commencement committee, like Naomi brought up. So we this week released a second statement, essentially calling on administration to work to make some version of an in-person graduation happen in light of USC getting approval from the state, and in light of the LA County Director of Public Health saying that we could be moving down another tier in Los Angeles County the next month. So we are really looking for student support on that letter before we send it up. So getting signatures from graduates and other supporters in the UCLA community will be really assisting in proving our message to administration. So any sharing that you can do of that, it's on all our socials, will be very appreciated, as well as within your offices would be great. Otherwise, in CSC news, this week is Homelessness Awareness Week. So our program support directors have been working with a large number of organizations to put this nice virtual week on. There's still events the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, through Friday. We've got a lot going on, so I'll link the event page in the chat, as long as with the letter for the commencement, and hope to see you there.
Thanks, Jonathan. I can't tell by the agenda if this is supposed to be spoken, so I'm just gonna call on you, and if like you don't have anything to say, just pass to the next person. Fac?
Yes, hello. I come with an update from the future activities subgroup. So the committee over spring break sent a draft to UCLA, which was approved by UCLA, but it's a working document, potentially changing based on what LADPH says and wants to change about it. Essentially, this document has kind of different levels of allowing events to resume on campus with prioritization for student groups. There's kind of different things of approval for other UCLA entities and like academic departments. There's a whole list of definitions, and I'm not going to go into like all the details because it'll be published soon, but just to give a little bit of an overview, in the document, there are kind of different levels that UCLA will go through depending on what tier we're in. So for the red tier, for example, outdoor venues would have a maximum capacity of 25% or 100 people, whichever is less. Indoor venues with a maximum of 25% or 50 people, whichever is less. Campus remains closed to non-UCLA affiliates. Blah, 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 must comply with LA DPH protocols. And then rules for vaccinated individuals remain the same as those who are not vaccinated. Orange tier kind of loosens up a little bit, and yellow tier even more. So the details of that will kind of be out, but for student groups and oh wait, sorry, can you all hear me still? Okay, sorry, my headphones did something weird. Let me continue. So for student groups looking to apply to have an event approved, which is a process, proposals would go to the events office, and the events office will evaluate on a first come first served basis. Proposals should be submitted at least 2 weeks prior to the first load-in date of the event, recommended time of at least 4 weeks. All participants have to be a member of the UCLA student community until we get to the yellow tier. You have to pre-consult with a sole advisor. There's this whole event checklist, which has like all these COVID safety guidelines. And you pretty much have to tell them like exactly what's going on at any given point in time. In terms of the specifics of like how to apply on, with the events office, that will all come out when it's published on the events office website, and I will let you all know as soon as that happens. Ask your feedback as to the best way to disseminate this information to students once it becomes public. I plan on reaching out to Sol, who they also sit on the committee, so I'm sure they have ideas, but I'll reach out to them. But if you have any other ideas, and then if you have any other like questions or concerns about any of this, let me know. This policy has already been approved by UCLA, but the events office is going to be the one ultimately approving or not approving of events. So if like there's any things you think they should consider, let me know and I will pass it along. That was a lot, so sorry. And you'll get the physical version of this as soon as it's published.
Thank you, Sachi. And again, really appreciate your work on that committee. Cool. FSC?
Yeah, so just to give an update on the relief fund, we are still in the process of doing the readings. They should all be due by next Friday, except for one student. I had a few readers who were no longer able to read, but I've been able to gather new readers that I kind of had on backup. So I think it'll only be delayed about 1 day till Saturday. But so we're still aiming for rec forms to be sent out by the end of week 3. And I'll update you all if anything changes, but for right now, I think all the readers are permanent. And then secondly, I mentioned this at my last officer report that we are meeting with financial aid kind of once or twice a month, depending on the month. So if you do have any concerns or questions, you can always text me individually or on GroupMe. But I also plan on sending out a form if you all have any questions or any comments that you want me to pass on to financial aid. When I gave them this idea, they were very they really liked the idea and wanted to hear from all of you because you all represent different communities. And so if you ever want to be in that meeting as well, please let me know and you can all join in that meeting. And that is all.
Thank you, Noe. SWC?
Hi, I have a couple of written updates as well, but I just wanted to say the SWC Basic Needs Fund is open, so would appreciate if you could share with your networks. Thank you.
Thank you. TSR?
Hi, everyone. So I have a couple of updates. The first one is we have officially hired our Transfer Student Center director. It has been a year since we haven't had one, so we're just super excited that we finally have one. She will be officially starting April 9th. I'm just happy that we were able to get her on board by spring. But yeah, I want to welcome Karina Salazar. She will be our new Transfer Student Center Director. Super excited to work with her. And I want to thank all the transfer students and just students in general who attended the interviews and gave their feedback, because that really helped administration choose the best person for the job. And I trust that she will be able to advocate for transfer students at the administrative level. So I'm just really happy about that. A reminder, Transfer Lobby Day, if you want to participate in Transfer Lobby Day and advocate for transfers at the UC level, our application closes tomorrow. Tomorrow, I believe at midnight. So if you're interested, you can just head on over to our Instagram page and we have the links there to apply. Also, a lot of UCs have been contacting us, specifically like transfer leaders at other UCs, and we've been working with them to sort of show them like step-by-step or how to advocate for a transfer rep position at their respective UCs. So that's really exciting too, just getting to collaborate across UCs to really support and represent transfers. And then we are currently, a student representative was chosen from each UC to review student region applications. I was chosen by Naomi, so I am part of that committee, and we are currently going to be reviewing 93 applications. 72 are undergraduates, 21 are graduates. So as that process continues, I will give updates on that. And then we are continuing, our committee, our office is continuing to meet with administration to address the demands in the resolution that we passed to support formerly incarcerated and student and system impacted students. And this will be an ongoing conversation. And I'm hoping that even though I guess this term is coming to an end, I'm hoping that they continue to speak to this community and they continue to serve them. So those are my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuleika. Parker?
Hi, everyone. So I do have 4 quick updates. The first one is that we are holding our first listening session, which will include administrative representatives from Senate Affairs and Academic Senate, and I think also housing. So that will be next Wednesday at 6 p.m. It's going to be like 90 minutes. We will be releasing the registration link soon, probably tomorrow. But like if any of you want to come, please, you're most you're welcome. We'll also have in that session some breakout rooms so that students can discuss and have some kind of informal dialogue with administration. So you're also welcome to come and talk in that, and meet some international students. The second update is that, and I think Aiden has more details on this. The UCSA have sent a letter to the UC-wide Academic Senate, if I'm not mistaken, regarding academic accommodation for international students. That was mainly prompted by the death of an international student in RPI, which I've mentioned in early this month. So on this note, thank you also, Aiden, for your support and for following through with this. And the other 2 things is that international students, specifically in person. Yes, yeah, that was my next update, Naomi. So for current incoming international students, so class of 2024, who wish to enter the US, they can contact their department advisors and counselors and ask for if the department is providing in-person or hybrid opportunities. If their department does provide those, and they're able to enroll in those opportunities, then they can contact Dacia Center to either request an amended I-20 or an amended DS 2019, whichever they need. And from there, they can do all of the visa processes if they need to, or just book a flight, but they have to be in the US by April 12th. So that's the most important part. They need to enter by the state. They cannot enter later after that. Otherwise, Dacia won't be able to verify their initial verify their status. Um, and the last update is regarding if you all, I believe you all remember, since the discussion was a little bit heated about the constitutional amendment. So following the advice of some council members, we did run a student-led petition. Although we didn't campaign for 2 weeks because finals and spring break, we're about at 1,000 signatures. I think we're kind of below that. So I might be coming with additional amendments next week to discuss. So yeah, those are all of my updates. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, moving on to admin rep, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Week 1 of spring. Just a couple reminders as you prepare to transition out of your office. You know, I believe we already distributed a template for a transition packet. So that's just meant to be more so helpful for you to internally transition from officer to officer. That's in addition to the support and training that Fernando and I and my team provide for you all. So just wanted to give a reminder, if you have a transition packet, start updating it. If you don't have one, there's a template you can use to input helpful information in there. And then Fernando may have more updates on this, but our SGS team is working on a survey for you all to see, if there's any information that would be helpful for an incoming officer that we are not already covering, so that we can make sure we, start including that in our training materials for the upcoming term. But that's it for me. Thanks all.
Thank you, Jessica. George?
No updates from me.
Awesome. And Dr. Geller? Dr. Geller?
Yes, no updates from me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Josh?
No updates, but I will tell you this, the Sweet 16, are we in Sweet 16 right now? UCLA is playing right now. Score is 34-25. UCLA is in the lead, and we're in the second quarter. So, the elite, yeah, whatever it's called, but go Bruins.
Thank you, Josh. Fernando?
Fernando, we can't hear you.
Awesome. Thank you, Fernando. Patty?
Just want to say welcome back. Happy spring quarter and no updates, but definitely looking forward to working with the president's office in our promotions and video projects. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we can move into new business now, and I see that Alfred is here, so you can take it away.
Thank you, Emily, and great to see all of you again for spring quarter. Just a week before elections is officially about to begin. I wanted to come here to council today to propose some election code amendments before the candidate orientation meeting. These amendments have to do more with the structure of e-board itself and administrative issues and just about the transition director. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can get right down into it. And I will be open for questions at the end. Okay. So the first amendment that I wanted to propose to council before at this week is like this clause here, exceptions to the election to this rule include amendments to the election code that has no direct impact on the existing rules and regulations of the current election cycle. So currently the elections board is not the elections board cannot present amendments to the election code after the candidate orientation meeting. And we all agreed that this was for the sake of making sure that the rules were completely consistent. And because to make sure that rules are consistent, we are not allowed to change it afterwards. And I completely agree with that. But I wanted there to be an exception for changes that do not directly affect the election cycle. For example, any structural changes with the committees and the elections board. I wanted to be able to still present that because right now, eBoard is currently going through a structural change with transition directors and potentially a chief of staff. So I want to pass some of these amendments during my last few weeks in office because I think restructuring of the eBoard is pretty important. And the next thing is just making it clear in the amendment that the election code amendments to the election code must be proposed by the elections board and then approved by USAC, and that the election code cannot be changed unless the amendment is brought up by eBoard. I was a little bit concerned, particularly about this, because there have been talks that have been happening that made it that we're talking about changing the election code without, I guess, changing the election code without being proposed by the elections board. And I want to make sure that it is very clear that there is a separation of power between the elections board and the and USAC, which is the elections board has the power to propose amendments and USAC has the power of consent and advice. And I want to make sure that this distinction is very clear. So this amendment is very important, and I really, really hope that council would approve this. And for the rest of the amendments, it's more administrative structural issues. So what I did was I made it clear that the chair, vice chairs, and the directors of the subcommittees are voting members of the executive committee, because I wanted to draw a distinction between the chairs and the directors and the transition director, who will be serving as a neutral director who does not really vote, but who is more of a chief of staff capacity. So I wanted to make that clear. And then and this one here also makes that clear. It's basically telling that the transition director is a part of the executive committee, but it does not have the ability to vote in executive committee decisions. And yeah, basically, and the last thing that I wanted to change about the transition director is the initial rule about the transition director said that they may not apply for any appointed position in the next year. But I thought that this might not be a fair thing, because I still wanted the transition director to be able to apply to be a transition director the next year. So it's because of that that I wanted to draw the distinction that the transition director can still apply to be a transition director next year. They just cannot apply for the chair positions or a director position. But yeah, these are all the amendments that I have for now. Does the council have any questions that they want to ask me?
I see Bakri's hand.
Hi, Alfred again.
Hi,
Um, yeah, I do have two quick questions. The first one is why not just call it like a chief of staff and just to avoid all of this confusion.
yeah,
Um,
like, sorry, go ahead. My bad.
yeah, I'm just gonna ask the two questions and go ahead, Alfred, after that. The second one, if you can just go to the last change about the being able to apply. So the only thing I fear is that because it says that they can do apply for a voting position if they resign. So the point of the transition director is to have this kind of continuity between the two election boards. And so what I fear is that um, the because of this, because the transition director cannot like apply unless they resign. So in the case that they resign and then they don't get actually like appointed for any reason, that might like make the transition between the two committees, like between the two boards, the old and new one, a little bit awkward and hard. um, so this is the potential issue that I see coming. It might not come, but like it it kind of defies the purpose of having a transition director if this actually happens.
Yeah, so these are very great questions. So for the first question that you gave about this being a chief of staff position, I do agree with you about that. And the work that the person is about to be doing is very similar to the chief of staff position and about transition work. So we've been thinking about like eBoard has been thinking about maybe like formally changing this to a chief of staff position, and then maybe make this a year-long position. So because eBoard honestly has a huge issue with work delegation. There's too much work that the chair has to do and the vice chair has to do, and the directors also have an enormously like ridiculous amount of work. So I wanted there to be better delegation. So yes, like that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. But like we wanted to be sure that we thoroughly review and revise all of the amendments and changes before we present them, and that's why I wanted to bring this amendment up so that I can bring the amendments about the transition director, changing it into a chief of staff later in the coming weeks instead of hastily doing it at this moment. So and in regards to what you're talking about, this provision is actually saying that the transition director, like it's what this is saying, that the transition director cannot resign and apply for an appointed position. It's not saying that they can resign and then they can apply for an appointed position. This is saying that if you are a transition director, then you are not eligible to be a chair, vice chair, or a director of a subcommittee, but you're still eligible to be a transition director the next year. Does that clear up like a little bit of the confusion?
I'm not sure how does this like I don't know, like this is what I understood, like this shall in no way precludes the election board transition director from resigning in order to apply for an appointed voting position on the elections board. So it basically says that you can actually like resign and then apply for an appointed voting position. So you're saying, because at the beginning, yeah, you're saying in the beginning.
Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead if you.
Yeah. Now that like I'm taking a close look at it, it does seem like this shall in no way preclude. Yeah, maybe this shall preclude. Is that okay? I think I may have forgotten this while we were drafting the language.
I mean, you can specify, instead of this, you can just specify that they can apply as a transition director again, but not like any other, like
Okay.
What's it?
Okay. Okay.
Reapply. Yeah.
So that's the new language, and I will be striking this out. Wait, no.
Oh no. You mean
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Does anyone have any other questions?
Actually, Alfred,
Yes.
on this same thing, I think what you should be deleting is the first sentence, and then you keep the last sentence and just delete the part about like they cannot resign, because you don't want them to resign. You know, you want them to continue either, as current director, a transition director, or reapply again as a transition director. But you don't want them to resign. That's the
Okay,
point.
so you want, okay.
So because the first one kind of says the same thing as the second one, uh, yeah. Then there's the I think no way, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, does any other council member have any other questions or concerns about these four amendments?
I wanted to jump in and address the First Amendment, actually just the second half of it. I have a concern about the limitation on who can present proposals for changes to the E-code. In the event that election board fails to bring forward the annual proposal, it's important that USAC be able to step in and do their own proposal. But again, only in those cases where the election board fails to bring forward an election code for the year.
For that, yes, only if the election board chair is negligent in their duty to bring the proposed amendments, I am open to I'm open to including language that would allow for alternatives, but definitely I just want to make it very clear that nobody can change the election code without the elections board, like if the elections board is being diligent about it.
Correct.
So-
It's in those cases where the election board fails to do so.
Okay, Dr. Galliford, that one, would you like, what type of language would you propose for this? Would it be like, this shall, sorry.
Something along the lines of, should the election board fail to propose an election code for the year, and you could put a deadline, by week 8 of winter quarter, I mean, you can come up with your own timeline, then USAC may bring forward its own election code amendments.
Might I ask a question here, Dr. Giller? Hi, can you hear me?
Are you speaking to Alfred or
Yeah.
to me?
No, I'm speaking to you. So, I'm really, like, just to make sure, isn't the election code like valid throughout the years or not?
The election code presumably would be, and yet every year it's changed. But
Yeah.
beyond that, in the event that any university policy or law change mandates a revision, if the election board fails to bring one forward, USAC would need the ability to take that action. So the right to bring forward the election code begins with the election board, and not just the board, but the chair specifically. The expectation is that each fall, traditionally, but it could be winter, it doesn't need to be fall. But before election cycle begins, the election chair either brings forward amendments or comes forward with a statement that there will be no amendments for the year. It's only in those cases where the election board chair fails to address the question of the election code prior to the start of election season that then council has the right to make proposals. You know, ultimately, it is for the chair to bring forward the proposals or a statement that none are needed because the prior year's code is perfect and will continue. And it's for council to vote on that.
Okay, so 2 points. The first one you're saying, because, okay, I just like, yes, it has been changing, every year, but it's not a requirement unless, there's a university policy or whatever that entails that. So instead of like just keeping this open-ended, can we just say that USAC can propose amendments to, like instead of just saying special circumstances, can we just define special circumstances? And the other thing is that it says that until like if the election board does not present like an amendment change by week 5 of winter quarter, then USAC can do so. Can we also like limit the like when USAC can use this ability so that it is like before the release of packets? Because I'm really like worried that that this can be used in terms of like USAC changing the E-code after the packets are released or like after the election cycle is like kind of started.
No one should ever change the election code after the packets go out, absent a very strong kind of exigent, unpredictable circumstance.
Yeah, and
So-
then can we just include that please there, because like we do like just to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, isn't that clear already in the rest of the election code that no changes should be made after packets are out?
I think it's pretty clear. I added language that says like USAC may propose and approve amendments in special circumstances only if the elections board fails to propose an amendment to the elections code by week 5 of winter quarter. I think it's pretty clear at this point, right? I think we can move forward with this. I'm gonna reshare. Sorry. Okay, here it is. Yeah, so I added this like special circumstances. I think that should address your concerns, Bakor. I think it's pretty clear that like from here that USAC cannot propose an amendment unless the election code does not propose a single amendment, and I think that bar is pretty hard to overcome. So I'm okay with this amendment, and I want to move forward with this. Does council have any other questions or concerns? Okay. If anyone does not have any questions or concerns, does someone want to help move this along?
Okay, I'm gonna motion to approve the election code final changes.
I second.
Bacher motions, Emily seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, by a unanimous vote, the election code amendments are approved for this. Oops, I'm so sorry. Are approved for this week. Thanks, Alfred, and thanks everybody who participated in the conversation.
Thank you.
Awesome. Moving on to our last item on the agenda, we have the ARC fund allocations. Take it away, Promise.
Great. Hi, everyone. This is just going to be really quick. So ARC, we had our first spring cycle allocations that we wanted to get approved. So I could go through, I'm going to put this inside of the folder so that folks can see it and it's like open to the public. I apologize for not attaching it earlier, but we made 10 allocations in the amount of $32,327.14 to 10 non-USAC entities for programming in our first spring cycle. So so I think this is a consent item. So anyone have any opposition?
Awesome. Does anybody have any opposition to this item? No? Okay, seeing as there's no opposition, then the ARC fund allocations are approved for this week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Promise. Okay. I don't know how we did it, but we did. This meeting is over. I will conclude it at 8:35 p.m.
The recording has stopped.
Okay.